very good morning to you all. Welcome again to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain. What's up?
Indeed, good morning. It's a Thursday morning. It's a bit wet here in the Federal Capital Territory, but it's a beautiful one nonetheless. Welcome. I'm Maupelgu Yusuf.
It's bright, beautiful and cool here in Lagos. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Koka.
And I'm Kayode Okikulu. There's so much happening really in the nation right now. So much to wrap our heads around. The National Assembly, on the streets, in the markets, in our pockets, the economy. There is so much. And, you know, it's even disheartening when you see things happen and you know that these things are avoidable. And I'm talking about the sad death of Dr. Vuare Diaso, a medical doctor who passed away recently as a result of what we understand to be an elevator crash. The Lagos State government has said it seemed that this was a mechanical failure of that elevator in the hospital premises on the island. And I mean, you may have seen that story and the outcry, the protest that trailed that story on different levels. For the doctors, they say the system has failed Dr. Diaso. First, in terms of maintenance of the elevator, which a lot of them said they have protested against time and again. And there you see her colleagues protesting yesterday, essentially seeking justice, calling for justice for Dr. Vuare Diaso, a medical officer who was undertaking her housemanship at the Lagos State General Hospital in Odon on the Lagos Island. Well, the enemy has responded, declaring an indefinite strike in 3 hospitals on the island, Lagos Island. And there you see them. I mean, these are medical doctors. You expect that, I mean, they're meant to focus on saving lives, but now they have to look inwards because now they are affected. And what is disheartening is the narrative we are hearing from the doctors. I'd like you to take a listen to this. This is one of our colleagues who was speaking yesterday about the incident, what happened, and their demands, because it is important. This could have been anyone, actually. This could have been anyone. And I think I saw it on one of the placards, one of them saying, it could have been me. So I'd like you to take a listen to one of our colleagues.
Justice for what? From HSC in 2022, and I'm here at the scene where everything happened. And Barry was a medical doctor here, our colleagues are here, and they have been the people who watched this incident happen and who have come together to demand for justice to happen. This is the elevator of which we have complained severally. This is most of them actually. We have complained severally and repeatedly about the elevators that they were not working, they were faulty. We complained to our facility manager, we complained to HSC, the General Hospital, literally every medical body that we could go to complain to them, and nothing was done. And yesterday our friend got to the elevator and he fell through 10 floors before they could get help. Over an hour before they could get help. And even when they got to the accident and emergency, which is 2 steps away from here, it was so hard to get her the emergency services she needs. It is clear that the system failed her, and we are demanding for justice. And we want everyone everywhere to see this and know that our friend died because of the negligence of the managing facility here, and we want justice for our friend Vuare Diaso. Thank you very much.
Lagos State, through the Ministry of Health, in fact, the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Health says that the investigation is on, and anyone found culpable will face, persecution, as it were. But a life has been lost from the 10th floor. I mean, it's really sad. I can't even imagine what the parents are going through right now. Bukola.
Kadi, we commiserate with the family of Dr. Vuare, and that was, much more than, a maintenance fault. That was a crash. It's a very terrible way to die. I've heard stories about people who died in a faulty elevator due to exhaustion, but this was a crash. The elevator, according to reports, crashed from the 10th floor where Dr. Vuare was inside it to the ground floor. And then reports say that she was rescued and rushed to the hospital, but she died there. And, it's just been just as sad reading tweets from doctors who served in that quarters. They say that there is a poor maintenance culture there. They complained several times to management. They wanted to go on strike, but management said they were being, heady and, subverting authority and all of that. Some people said they had been stuck in the elevator more than once, more than twice. So it's really, really sad. We try our best here, with our advocacy to, just tell the Medical Doctors Association, the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors, to be temperate in their agitations to go on strike. This is not an encouraging report at all. Little wonder, that Nigerian medical doctors feel it's not a very good environment in which they can work. Kayode, I can't tell you how many times now, in my interactions with the few medical doctor friends and health practitioners that I know, part of my pleasantry with them would be, please don't jackpot, but what do we say to our doctors now when we have such reports? The Lagos State government has more explaining to do than just, telling us that that was due to a mechanical fault. It looks much more than a mechanical fault. If doctors there are saying to us that there's a poor maintenance culture in that general hospital on the island. Malpe.
Oh, what do you say, really? This is where you know that our poor maintenance culture, has put us in trouble. And it starts from the very bottom. It starts from, when people don't do what it is that they're supposed to do. And that's what permeates all the way, into the high echelons of government. It starts from the person who is supposed to fix a lift at a particular time and doesn't fix it. It continues to, when a lift is not exactly in good shape, just put a sign, is out of service, for the sake of safety, and nothing is done about it. It starts from, the lack of responsibility on the part of many people who think, well, it's government work, it's not my personal work. This is what it results in, a death that could have been prevented. And we see that everywhere. I mean, take a look at our safety reports. Is it Federal Road Safety Management Agency? What happens? How many lives do we lose to accidents that were preventable, totally avoidable in workplaces? How many people are actually safety conscious at home? How do we treat matters of safety? These are the little building blocks that eventually results in tragedies like this. But on this occasion, Buki, you've asked, what do we say to them? We don't say anything to them. We carry a placard alongside them. We stand with them on this one to say this is one death too many, one death that could have been avoided, and it's totally needless. I think that, Dr. Wairi represents the best of us. Her parents have given the best that they could. Invest in an education in a child. She goes to one of the topmost private universities in Nigeria. That's a lot of money. That also tells you that, she was also very intelligent. We know that it's not just any Tom, Dick, and Harry that is admitted to read medicine. I'm not saying everybody else is dull, but we know that these are the cream of the cream when it comes to intelligence. She's about 2 weeks away from completion of her medical degree or medical course, 2 weeks away from housemanship, completion of housemanship. And this is the tragedy that happens as a result of what? Carelessness? Oh, we carry a placard alongside them and ensure that the Lagos State government holds everyone down the line from the very top to the least person who ought to have made sure that this ought to have been in functioning order. And perhaps extends it around, because really, we understand that I think the local governments or so are supposed to have, for every building that has, that has an elevator in it, there is a department, whether it's at the local level, whether it's at the state government level, that's supposed to go around to ensure that these elevators are in good working condition. Where were they? What did they do? So if those people did not do their work, or they did not ensure that their work was done in a government facility, such as a hospital, because, an emergency could have been taken through that lift. It is important that hospitals have working lifts. They're supposed to use it to carry beds and patients and people out of surgery. This is something that's supposed to be functional. It should not be a matter of conjecture. Is it working? Is it not working? But this is where we currently are. As you said, our sympathies are with the family. But also, we carry a placard alongside the doctors this morning and say, we are with you on this one. Demanding accountability from those who ought to be given it. Emily.
Not that we plan to spoil the viewers' morning this morning with this kind of narrative, but just had to try and highlight the importance of us all doing the right things. Yesterday, we talked about paying premium to lives, human lives, and now you have this. And some years ago, I will discuss the collapsed buildings. Several of those experts kept on telling us, we do what we can, we try, but they don't listen to us, government doesn't do this, and so they got tired. But here's to say to all those HSC or health safety experts, professionals, you cannot afford to lose your voice. It may appear as though nobody listens to you, nobody wants to listen. You cannot afford to lose your voice. So we all have to. You have to ensure, as much as possible, you continue those narratives. And as little as, there's just so much that needs to be focused on. But good to hear and know that Lagos State government has set up a committee to look into what happened. But the big question is what they do with the report. Will it be implemented? Will lessons be learned? Will we make sure that it doesn't happen again as much as we can prevent it? All of those questions, I can't guess if your guess is as good as mine, but we could have a fair idea, but we need to be proved wrong moving forward in this kind of matters. But fortunately, our hearts go out to the families and their colleagues, of course, but we need to have a second look at how we do things in this society. Because if not, we just may have these stories time and again. That's not what we want. All right, that's it. Let's go right ahead and take you through some of the dailies here this morning. Now, we'll start with Vanguard newspaper. They are focusing on what transpired yesterday. Labour protests hardship as Tinubu wades in. So, after the scenario across the country, here is what it says. And look at the first of the riders. FG moves to placate Labour with wage award. Others. So that's what you get to see here. And then you also get to see on the front page of Vanguard here today, promises to bring to rejig steering committee to roll out, what's for that, CNG vehicles. And we have spoken about, after that president's speech, I mean, his handlers, the aides, they need to hit the ground running and break all of this down, because we're already getting inquiries concerning how all of these plans will work. Because remember, our guest yesterday did speak about implementation. It's a huge component. So if you don't get it right at that stage, will be a challenge. So, so that's part of what the president he's wading in, and then you get to see several other riders here. Lawyers differ on contempt proceedings by FG. So that is an interesting part and component to the entire thing, which we will also get to hear legal opinions on this matter in the light of how this is all playing itself out. Cut down costs, use major Nigeria vehicles, Labour tells NAS. Protesters pull down NAS gate. Senate begs Labour to suspend strike. Promises to look demands in 1 week. Yeah, that's what it says. Senate begs Labour to suspend strike. Promises to look demands in 1 week. Okay. All right, it's drying my head.
Yeah, typo, possibly.
Because they can only maybe take a look at it for onward transmission to the president or see how they can mediate, but they're not the one to address it. Clearly, everybody knows that. So, just to know. Blast police for locking gate against Labour. FG files contempt proceedings against NLC TUC. But maybe guys, I don't know if I missed it, but I think so far we didn't get any reports of police handling protesters, as it were. That's a good sign. So I hope that is the standard moving forward, ensuring that people have a right to protest, but anyone who tries to infiltrate the protest got to be dealt with, swiftly. The Lion and the Tiger needs to be on standby, because good to see that people should be allowed to go out there. But anybody tries to do whatever to violate the laws, you'll have it coming. We spoke about infrastructure, and then look at this at the bottom strip. How infrastructure decay hampers judicial system. A lot of things that we expect from the judiciary, but who knows? This among several others. But we're also keeping a tab on what is happening with our neighbors in Niger. And then you see here, cool, Nigeria cuts power supply to Niger Republic. Oh, okay. I hope, okay, well, we're only hoping that they must have figured out or thought about several steps and plans, because I know that this kind of question has come up several times in several years, and the reason why we were supplying them, I think some experts were suggesting, look, we don't want them to cut off.
The water supply.
Because if that happens,
they dam it at their end. What happens to the Niger River?
They'll dam the dam to us. So,
it's a big question, but I think it's a risk we can take because we're in the rainy season for now. Yes, we're in the rainy season.
But
so
for now, because
yeah,
they won't be thinking for now. They will be thinking permanently.
Oh, well.
So what happens?
There are a number of other alternatives. But let's see. This is not me saying it is okay, because don't forget that this doesn't really affect the leaders. It is the people of Niger who truly might not have had a hand in how this coup, whether or not a coup happened in their country, that are going to bear the brunt. It's businesses in Niger, and that would eventually force people out of the country. That might make many more refugees. So when sanctions are applied, oftentimes, it is the people who actually bear the brunt of the sanctions. So you have to ask, how affected are the leaders whom you're actually trying to affect by this sort of, sanctions? But I think Nigeria still needs to exert itself to say, look, we're going to show you that we can, without outrightly going to war, we can declare some sort of war.
Yeah, but the thing too is that, well, I know we don't have a Minister of Foreign Affairs, so who can ask several questions concerning government policy, what is the plan, how are they sure that whatever steps they're taking is to the benefit of the Niger Republic, Nigeria, Africa, by extension. So all of those questions are things that we like to hear from governments concerning what really is going on, because don't forget, we have that borderline. Remember, several states up north bordering Niger Republic. In fact, they say that literally there isn't any physical border. You just cross in and back and forth. So several concerns. And then the response of the people who are in Niger Republic, if you see, so it just raises more questions.
There will always be people who will be glad about a coup. There will be people who will be dissatisfied. Don't forget that in a democracy, it is majority that carries the day. It's not the minority will have their say, but majority will carry the day. So people will always be, especially if they're not content about how a democratic process has gone, it could be a problem. But we'll see how matters eventually pan out as a result of this. But I'm sure what government is trying to force them to do is force the leaders to a negotiation table. When you have your people crying out, saying we have no electricity, and you will be forced to find solutions, and part of it will be to dialogue with the country, with ECOWAS. And Nigeria right now is currently leading a particular body. So we'll see whether this has a desired effect. But I hope that it will be measured as they apply some of the sanctions.
Absolutely.
New Telegraph is what I'm looking at for you this morning, and look at what they have. Fuel price hike, hardship. Labour meets with federal government, suspends protests, opts for more constructive engagement. Workers protest in major cities, pull down NAS complex gate. Falano, others lead Lagos leg of the protest. Say IMF, World Bank can't help Nigeria. Port Harcourt refinery will start operations in December. That's according to the presidency. So pages 2, 4, 5, 7, and 30 is where you'll find details. Don't forget that Labour, in their initial response to the president's broadcast on Monday, had said, Mr. President, you were silent on the issue of refineries. When will our refineries come on board? Looks like they've been able to extract a promise. So December, we're a few months away from it. Where are we now? August? Yeah. September, October, November. 4 months more, and we'll know if there is actually something. There's water in the coconut. That's my own. That's my own coining. If there's something actually in that promise. But look at this. Ministerial screening. President 6, Senate swift confirmation. That is right here. That's also happening as Oyetola, Lalong, Bagudu, Gaidam, Matawale, 14 others make second list. Unbundled EFCC, ICPC for effective performance. Fagbemi tells federal government. Alake 6, stiffer regulations for social media. Pages 2 and 26 is where you find details. Capital flight. Federal government takes over idle facility to hold 400 billion naira annual loss. So just in case you're wondering what idle facility it is, you might want to look at it on page 3, but it looks like it has to do with shipping, because I'm seeing right here on the front page something around Nimasa, Continental Shipyard, etc., etc. So you'll see details somewhere, but 400 billion naira annual loss in capital flight, that's certainly a lot. So indeed, see how things pan out on page 3. And the story which we already took for you earlier, they have it here. Female doctor dies inside Lagos General Hospital's lift. Really very tragic. Rest in peace. You see details on pages 6, 7, and 28. And as I write into that story, Lagos doctors declare strike. That's also there as well. Leave it there for New Telegraph.
And turn to this Nigeria, which also trails on the nationwide protest from yesterday by organized labor. And this is the big story. Fuel subsidy. Protesting workers pull down NAS gate, that's National Assembly gate, to meet lawmakers as nationwide labor protests ground activities in major cities. NAS will look into issues within 7 days. Tinubu meets with NLC, TUC, promises to rejig steering committee. And of course, you cannot ignore the big picture on the front page, or the inset picture, if you like, on the front page of this Nigeria. There you see members of organized labor walking towards the gate, and then you see, in a subset, the members of the organized labor behind the gate, and then you see the gate on the floor. What we heard yesterday was that it was a mild drama, and from the looks, it looks like it was more intense than what was reported. You never underestimate members of the civil society and organized labor, and indeed a hungry man, it really is an angry man. But it was also heartwarming that things were able to be brought under control yesterday, as they also met with a leadership of the National Assembly, a team appointed by the leadership rather, who addressed them yesterday. Go above the nameplate. It appears that the hardship is not just on major foodstuff, but also on your entertainment. Of course, Nigerians have been paying more for soft drinks, but listen to this one: Nigerians to pay more for beer as economy bites hard. So you just have to stick with the necessities at home now and be more moderate with your entertainment. A few more stories before we exit. Go to the bottom strip. Ministerial screening. DSS graft war approach wrong, says Fagbemi. That's one of the ministerial nominees. And right under that, there's this rider: Akpabio prevents Alake from reciting national anthem. Let's leave it there for this Nigeria.
Well, the more things change, the more they remain the same, they say. Well, take a look at the Guardian newspaper for now. The big story is on the cabinet size, and this is what you find on the front page of the Guardian. Cabinet size nears 70 as Tinubu ignores calls for a lean government. So that's the angle we have right now. 70 So I'm imagining that's for the ministerial nominees and other aides and the rest. But page 6 has more details. The big pictures is like a collage of what went down yesterday, which of course we'll be focusing on the program this morning. And you see, after Tinubu's parley, Labour FG in fresh legal tangle over protests. But not to worry, we'll help you, well, walk through that tangle, as it were, on the program as well this morning. I'll just take one more for you. Buhari Osinbajo absent as APC NEC ratifies Ganduje today. So we'll keep our eyes on that one as well, and of course report it for you. But we see that the former president and former vice president have been, writing statements as to why they were not able to attend. I know a lot of people may have been, seeing some other things besides what was written on those statements, but hey, we'll just leave it there for the Guardian newspaper. Chamberlain.
Newspaper next. Hardship. Tinubu wades in as protests rock states. Abuja. Labour may suspend action after meeting with president. Okay, some people say they already have. We can no longer breathe, workers tell FG. Question 1 trillion naira subsidy savings. NAS appeals for 1 week to intervene. Okay, so that's the context now. The question in the 1 trillion naira subsidy savings, I thought that the government had said that they were saving some part of it at a pack. States had gotten their own fair share. All right, well, maybe they need to speak up more on this kind of matters. APC chair, NEC, to ratify Ganduje's appointment today. There you go. And then Niger, ECOWAS defense chiefs meet. Nigeria cuts power supply. So that also features here. We have no control over fuel price, forex. CBN tells reps. So another question for another day. Experts query NCAA's director's role in Lagos plane crash, among several others. That is leadership this morning.
Daily Trust is the next one now, and take a look at what they have. Nationwide protests. Tinubu meets Labour as workers storm National Assembly government houses. Yes, it's very important to emphasize that it didn't just happen right here in the Federal Capital Territory. It also happened in all the state capitals as well. Port Harcourt refinery will resume operation December. That's according to the president. We'll address your demands in 7 days, Senate tells Labour. Port summons NLC over contempt. So that was also there in the statement of the NLC yesterday, saying that the Labour leaders had been sued. On the one hand, they were saying that government was pacifying them. On the other hand, they were saying they were in contravention of a court order and taking that to the court. And now we understand that the Labour leaders are being sued for contempt. That's been reported here on page 4 of the paper. You also see this, ex-governors Bagudu, Lalong, Matawale, others make Tinubu's final ministerial list. Okay, this is the real reward list, is it? Page 10 is where...
Workers are back. Like they never left.
Okay, page 10 is where you get details. You also see this, okra disease wreaks havoc on farmers' income. Oh no. Yeah, okra? Yes, okra. And usually the rainy season is a time when people plant okra. Ooh. It grows really beautifully about this time. You also see here a caucus meeting. Tinubu charges APC leaders on financial discipline. That's also there. Man died protecting son from collapsed building in Akure. That is also right there. A number of other stories which you might want to see beneath the nameplate. Devaluation. Nigerian firms record 716.8 billion naira losses. You might want to know who's tabulating it, who's doing the calculations of how much companies are losing as a result of the naira being devalued. Page 19 is where you get details. So leave it there for Daily Trust.
Yeah, so there you go. That wraps it up with a look at some of the dailies here this morning. But we will be back and discuss some of these matters that you have seen here. But of course, we also like you to wade in. Let's hear your thoughts on this matter. We'll be glad to do that. Just stay on with us. We will be right back.
The Unity Fountain in Abuja came alive with members of the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, the Trade Union Congress, TUC, and their civil society allies who gathered to protest the recent hike in the pump price of petrol in the nation's capital. It's a carnival of sorts, with workers waving their flags in the air and displaying placards with messages articulating their demands. They file out of the Unity Fountain, singing solidarity songs as they go. Their first port of call is the Ministry of Justice, occupying the entrance for over 30 minutes. The protesters leave the Justice Ministry towards their main destination, which is the National Assembly. However, access into the National Assembly did not come easy. The protesters had to force their way through the gates, bringing it down. The protesting workers marched straight into the premises of the National Assembly and gather at the concourse.
They don't get shame. They don't get shame at all. They're not politicians.
Here, the NLC president restates their demands.
We demand the immediate implementation in good faith of all resolutions with Congress jointly signed with the government and TUC. Immediate reversal of all anti-poor policies of government, including the recent hike in PMS price, school fees, and VAT.
The federal lawmakers here promised to give speedy consideration to the requests.
I am begging you to call off the strike and give us 1 week, and we will report progress. And if you are not satisfied with the progress we are making, then you can take further action. This should serve as a warning to the presidency, to the National Assembly, to everybody. Then if nothing very tangible comes out of our effort, then you can take action.
Just give us a chance to get involved, just a little chance. And we will make sure if things are not resolved in your favor, I am representing you. You can trust me.
Promises have been made, and the labor leaders seem to be giving the lawmakers the benefits of the doubt.
In organized labor, we don't run for meetings, like I said over there. Whenever you call us for meetings, we are there. But when we are in that meeting, we assess what you are telling us. When you are in that meeting, we look at everything. Those things, are you really serious about this, or is it just a jamboree? And we will also address Nigerians. So they have said 1 week, so we will go back now and we'll re-examine the situation and we'll communicate to Nigerians.
The demands of organized labor include the immediate reversal of the recent hike in the price of petrol, the implementation of resolutions with the federal government, immediate fixing of the refineries, payment of 8 months' salary arrears of university lecturers, amongst others. In the next 1 week, many of these workers will be watching keenly to see how their demands will be attended to, as promised by the federal lawmakers.
Yes, indeed. Mr. Ebun-Olu Adegboruwa joins us on the program this morning. A senior advocate and human rights activist is right here with us in our Lagos studio. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much for having me.
What a day it was yesterday. I mean, we saw organized labor protesting on the streets of not just the nation's capital, but across states of the Federation. And essentially, they were protesting against what they described as the anti-people policy of the Tinubu government. We understand that central to that, of course, is the recent hike in the price of petrol, the cost of living, and all of that. I mean, you're an activist as well. We saw senior lawyers joining Labour, and I realized I didn't see you joining them. Was that intentional? Is your protest away from the streets and more in the courts, just on the side, that is?
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. I think that we, the people of Nigeria, with Labour in spirit and in action, and we commend the Nigeria Labour Congress led by Comrade Joe Ajaro and the TUC, and indeed all Labour and civil society coalition. We have various areas of collaboration with Labour, both on the street, in the court system, and in various other platforms. So at times it may be necessary for us to do background work for Labour to ensure that the process is successful. But beyond that is to also say that, you know, we're coming to a stage in Nigeria where the masses must be allowed to breathe, if I can use that word. And I commend the government on the one part that throughout Nigeria, in Lagos, in Abuja, Port Harcourt, Kaduna, the protests were peaceful, and then there was no incident recorded at all. So that shows you clearly that in the past, when these protests or strikes or demonstrations have taken place and you have incidents, it's always provoked by government agencies and fit columnists. If the police would do its duty of providing protection for peaceful protesters, you will keep seeing things like this going on in this country without any incident. So it's commendable on the part of government, or also the law enforcement agencies, and also commendable on the part of Labour. And we should see more of this, not just Labour, but indeed the opposition political parties. I'm talking about People's Democratic Party, Labour Party. You know, you do not take politics as just taking crumbs from the table. The opposition is supposed to keep government on its toes. It's not a place to share ministerial lists or offices or crumbs in the National Assembly or in government quarters. An opposition party is supposed to be the voice of the people, to keep x-raying the policies of government and then giving objective alternatives every now and then. But we're not seeing that in PDP and even in Labour Party.
And I see that you wrote a piece, I think it was about a month ago, Tinubu on familiar turf, if I'm correct. And then part of what you said was that the euphoria of fuel subsidy removal by President Tinubu, the commendations from foreign nations about the exchange rate unification, the devaluation of Naira would seem to have driven the president into some kind of inaction, whereby 1 month after his inauguration, there's no cabinet in place, and then you talked about quite a number of things. And do you agree that indeed these policies, or at least the removal of fuel subsidy and the hike in petrol, are anti-people? Because what we saw when the president removed subsidy was some sort of jubilation from people saying, oh, long-term coming. But before we get into what's playing out in the courts, particularly for this, do you also see it as anti-people, as Labour has described it?
Well, maybe we should give some background to this. In 2012, the federal government explained to the people of Nigeria that subsidy needed to go. We were told by the opposition political parties, then led by the current president, that it was necessary to subsidize fuel and other parts of the people of Nigeria in terms of our economic survival. And we believed them at the time. For me, personally, I believe that subsidy should go, but it should go along with other arrangements that must have been put in place by the government. First is that you need to at least show some kind of empathy with the people of Nigeria in terms of the luxuries of governance, the convoys, the offices. You see now that instead of cutting the ministerial portfolio, the president has added to it. We now have 42, which shows that there is no economic problem or hardship on the part of the executive. So if you want the people to agree with your own policy, you then must lead by example in terms of the leadership giving sacrifices that people can verify. For instance, in terms of salaries, in terms of allowances, whether in the Senate or in the executive. So I believe that subsidy should go, in fairness, because we have been told, and I believe that it was just a corrupt system that is benefiting some few people. But for that to go, the refineries must work because we can't keep importing fuel. And then also you unbundle the NNPC. Because if you say there is no subsidy, why is NNPC fixing prices? It's always the NNPC stations that determine what other marketers will charge. That means that there's no deregulation as it's affecting kerosene, diesel. You can go to any filling station today and buy diesel at a particular price. You go to another filling station, it may be lesser. So that's deregulation. And then also the government says that he has invested in the Dangote refinery and that he was going to work in July. And now we are in August and it's not working. So you need to get people to agree or understand your policies, before you announce the subsidy removal. And I think that's the challenge that we have about subsidy removal. We have no doubt that it should go, but that the appropriate conditions for implementing that policy were not in place as at the time the president made that announcement.
Mr. Adegboruwa, so many questions to ask around the refinery and government state, but let's quickly look at what played out yesterday. On the one hand, it was reassuring to see that the president in fact met with the leadership of the TUC and the NLC, and a team from the National Assembly also met with them. But then again, we now heard that the federal government had filed a contempt suit against the leadership of the TUC and the NLC for the mass protests nationwide. What do you think is playing out there?
I think we should just explain, as a lawyer, for there to be law and order in society, everybody must obey the order of a court. Once an order is given, you have to obey it. If you are not satisfied with the order, you either appeal against it or you challenge it to have it set aside. But the order that was granted by the National Industrial Court on the 5th of June was in respect of a strike action. The NSC gave notice when fuel subsidy was removed and price went to 518 or 68 naira. So it gave a notice to engage government, if certain conditions were not met. And the federal government went to court and secured an ex parte order. So any case filed is limited to the facts of the case. So I believe that the case that was filed by the federal government was against labor, and in respect of that strike notice that was given in respect of the initial increase in fuel prices. But while the case was pending, the federal government itself did not abide by the contents of the case. The fuel subsidy, fuel price also went up again to 600 and something. So the facts changed. And that means that the order that was granted probably did not cover the recent event, unless there's been an amendment, and that amendment has not taken place. So I believe that the order was limited to the first strike notice that was given. That's one. Number two, I think from the explanations given by Labour, it was not a strike. They went on a protest in exercise of their fundamental right under Section 39, because our constitution gives the right to every citizen to freely associate together, and also for freedom of expression. And then secondly is also that those of us in labor, in civil society organizations, we were not part of the case. The federal government did not sue the civil society organizations, Committee for Defense of Human Rights, all the organizations that we represent. So we are not part of the suit. And you see that we were part of the protest yesterday. So I don't think that there is any contempt, in fairness, from my understanding of this case.
That Labour has run foul of.
I do not think so. But I do not support that any party should violate the order of a court. But in this particular case, there is a distinction in the sense that the strike is not what has been declared. And also a major component of the protest is civil society, and we're not part of the case between federal government and Labour. And I must say one thing, because and in fairness to the federal government, you cannot go to court on a matter like this if we were to advise the federal government as lawyers, because you cannot get a court order to restrain hunger. You cannot get a court order to restrain suffering, because everything we're doing in this country is based on what all of us are experiencing. I buy fuel, I run generator. So there's no way you can pretend that these things are not real. So the option is to address them, because because court is a technical place where you just make judgments, you give judgments, you make orders. It will not address my stomach. It will not address the salary of workers. It will not address the suffering of the masses of our people. It will not address the Greek collapses and darkness that the government has imposed on us. So I think the reality is for the government to engage them. And I commend the president that, and maybe for the first time, we have a president sitting down with labor to engage and discuss, and you saw that indeed helped to douse the tension when there is personal engagement. But it should go beyond engagement and rhetorics. If you say the refinery is going to work in December, that's Port Harcourt refinery. At what capacity?
And very quickly, before you go off on that trajectory, relatedly, there's no Minister of Justice or Attorney General of the Federation, yet the federal government is able to quickly initiate this suit. But on the other hand, the National Association of Resident Doctors were to embark on strike, but government appealed to them saying that there is no cabinet yet, and there's no minister. Should we hold government accountable in that regard? Is government justified to say that the president does not have the details, the facts of the matter, and as such, the doctors should be patient?
I think I take it from what Comrade Joe Ajero said at the end of his meeting with the president. When journalists were asking whether the NLC and TUC will call off the strike, he said, we have met a president who understands our language, who also is part of us in terms of having experience in organized protest and strike. The president got to power through opposition, through protests, through strikes. I mean, even while a president was in place, as a presidential aspirant, he went to Abeokuta to challenge a sitting president with that Abeokuta declaration. So he is somebody who is used to opposition. So I believe that one of the things we should see as a change in the current government is that you don't wait until unions embark on strike or give notices to address their issues. Because before you got to a stage when doctors declared a notice to go on strike, they've been writing letters, they've been making announcements, they've been holding press conferences. So I think one of the few things we want to see in this particular regime is that the engagement of labor unions, of civil society organizations should not come only when strikes have been declared. And it's important to have that transparency on the part of government, because you can't say you don't have a cabinet to address a labor challenge on the one hand for doctors, and then suddenly you also then have a cabinet that is able to engage labor and civil society to go and commence contempt proceedings. So the government has to come out clean and be transparent.
Let's take a deeper look at this contempt proceedings matter, because it's important to really understand what's playing out. So yes, on the 5th of June, the case before Justice Anoue, that order was given, and essentially this is the order that was given by Justice Anoue, says that the defendants or respondents are hereby restrained from embarking on the planned industrial action or strike of any nature pending the hearing and determination of a motion or notice dated dates June the 5th. And I know there's been this back and forth. Mr. Falano, the Ministry of Justice, in fact, the Solicitor General, Mrs. Jedi Agba, had come out to say that, well, the government is not saying labor should not protest, or anyone at that should not protest. But she said that essentially what her statement had said was, if labor is going to be protesting against subsidy removal, which is the issue in court already, that might constitute contempt of court, because essentially courts say you should maintain status quo once a case is before the court. So I'm just trying to give a background as to the back and forth that has been playing out. So if labor is saying, well, this is not a strike action, and the Ministry of Justice, the Solicitor General, is saying, well, but you're protesting on an issue which is before the court, what would be your own view then, seeing all this build up to this point?
Like I said earlier, I do not support any violation by any means of a subsisting order of court. But I think that there is a need for clarification. Yesterday's protest, and not a strike, was not against subsidy removal per se. The points being raised by labor and civil society, we talked about anti-people policies, increment in school fees. We talked about electricity generation. And the reversal in the recent hike in the price of petrol. Which is about 610, not the initial one.
In fact, 637.
Yes.
But isn't that tied to subsidy removal?
Well, for me, if subsidy removal is what federal government took to court, then the matter is limited to that. Once the issues involved is, number one, not a strike, because indeed you will recall that offices opened yesterday. From the report of your correspondent who covered the event, it shows that Labour, first of all, went to the Ministry of Justice, and the place was open, which means workers reported for work.
So a protest is not an industrial act?
No, it's not. And I must make that difference. So it's possible, for instance, you as Coyote, maybe your union has declared a protest to go to Alausa or to move on the street. You take an excuse from your boss to participate in that protest, to exercise your fundamental and constitutional right.
And the boss in this case is the federal government, and I imagine the federal government did not give them the excuse, or at least did not allow them to go on that protest.
Well, the federal government didn't say that they didn't grant workers the right to protest.
That's an interesting angle.
It's a strike that government is complaining about, and strike is that you cease from reporting for work. You have taken a decision not to participate, not to engage in any official work at all, and for a particular period of time. And by this morning, I don't think there's any protest going on again. So it was important to make that distinction that what the court sought to restrain, Labour has not violated that from their own presentation. No strike has been declared at all.
Now, back to this subject of refineries, although the federal government didn't directly address the nation or Labour on that, but the feedback we got from the president of the TUC, who spoke on our sister program yesterday, was that the president gave an assurance that by the end of the year, the Port Harcourt refinery would, be back on stream. But then again, we had officials of the last administration report that it would have been working by December last year, and then the NMDPRA also said it would be working by January this year, but now we're in August. Should we accept wholesale this time around this new target date for the delivery of the Port Harcourt refinery?
I think the first thing is to urge the president to make a holistic declaration, because we're talking about the investment of the money of the people of Nigeria. What is the status of Kaduna refinery, of Warri refinery, and then of Port Harcourt? Because he's only just mentioned Port Harcourt, and money was invested in turnaround maintenance and resuscitation of all the refineries. That's one. The second angle is for me to appeal to Labour, and I think it's important. If there is turnaround maintenance going on in any of the refineries, Labour should be the first person to know, because they are the ones working there. So they also owe the people of Nigeria, and as we have told them, to go around and do their own auditing of those refineries, so that it doesn't stop at presidential declarations. If indeed there's any turnaround maintenance going on, if Warri refinery or Port Harcourt will work in December, Labour and TUC should be in a position to tell Nigerians. So after the presidential declaration, Labour should do its own auditing. But beyond that itself, the government should be giving monthly briefing. Because if something is to work in December, by August we will be able to know. By September, give us a breakdown of what work has gone. By October, November, and then at what capacity? Because I mean, it's not just to say it will be pumping, and it's only pumping maybe at 10% capacity, which should throw us into where we are now. So it should involve a declaration of the quantum of production that will be involved in those refineries, so that we can know whether it will meet the demands of consumption of Nigerians.
Yeah, but a quick one here. Should we be asking more questions relating to accountability? If the Dangote refinery could have been built in 4 years, but the Buhari administration reportedly spent 11 trillion naira on fixing of refineries, and yet they're not working over a period of, if you also calculate a period of nearly 2 decades that the government has been spending money on refineries. And by the way, who should we be directing these questions to?
I think that from the look of things, based on the list, or at least the precedent that's been created, the president, right from period of President Olusegun Obasanjo, has been retaining the portfolio of Minister of Petroleum. President Obasanjo was the Minister of Petroleum. President Goodluck Jonathan retained that, and also President Muhammad Buhari retained that. We don't know the style of the current president, whether he's going to appoint a substantive petroleum minister. But at least in this past regime, the Minister of State for Petroleum, I'm sorry, I forgot his name now.
Silva,
gave us an assurance that the Dangote refinery was going to pump in July. For me, honestly, it's a private organization. I don't see what business government has.
We have 20%.
Yes, that's the point I'm making. I don't see what business government has in investing in a private enterprise. I don't see what the business government has in that. And quite apart from that, we've been told by the labor unions that Dangote refinery probably will not pump fuel until December, if at all it's going to do that. That's on the one side. The money of the people of Nigeria that has been invested in Port Harcourt, Kaduna, Warri refinery, there should be an account. There should be a website where you can go to that place and assess how much has been sent, the company that is engaged for the maintenance, the contract that was awarded, because that is transparency indeed. And the president we have now gave us the assurance that he was going to run an open government. So if it was not done by the past regime, by now, once we have a substantive petroleum minister, the first thing he should do is to go to the website and then show us who are the people engaged in the contract, how much was awarded, and then again unbundle NNPC. Because
beyond what it is,
oh
the
yes,
NNPC limited,
you just have
already.
to. If you really want to implement the Petroleum
Industry Act,
PIA, you have to unbundle NNPC.
What does unbundling mean to you? By the way, just on the side, some disagree with you on that definition of industrial action, saying it doesn't mean a strike. You've sent a meaning that it essentially is when workers join together and do something to show that they are unhappy. So to that extent, they believe that a protest is also an industrial action. But back to the major matter, what does unbundling mean to you, really?
Government, you have no control in terms of deciding the template. And then secondly is that you let the affairs be transparent. The managing director of NNPC is still largely a government appointed person. Let the oil companies have a stake. Let the host communities have a stake. Let private sector have a stake, just like you have done to electricity generation, just like you have done to telecoms. Because that is our major source of income. And it seems that everywhere we go, we see that it is the major source of corruption. In terms of knowing the quantum of oil that we are producing daily, in terms of knowing the quantum of oil that we import daily, in terms of knowing the quantum of oil that we consume daily. These things are shrouded in secrecy.
Well, clearly the sector can do with a lot of transparency, and it's not rocket science, really. But we need to go to break. Still a lot of grounds to cover, Mr. Adegboruwa. There's still the ministerial nominees, the screening ongoing, the recent list, which you have, of course, talked about. But we'll take on all of that in just a moment after the break. Please stay with us.
It's D-Day, and members of the Labour Congress and its affiliates are out on the streets of Lagos to drive home their demand for a better country. The messages are written on the various banners displayed. Let poor Nigerians breathe, fix their refineries, reduce the cost of governance, and save the masses from poverty and hunger, amongst others. To avoid hoodlums hijacking the peaceful protest, the police are on standby. One by one, the union leaders take turns to address the crowd, united in the struggle.
The message we are here to pass to the sitting and incumbent government of President Bola Tinubu is that Nigerian workers, the entire Nigerian masses are suffering. It has even gone beyond suffering. Our people are dying on a daily basis.
How can few people be cornering trillions and we cannot identify them?
We are only awaiting the result of the NLC because it's just a day action. And luta continua.
The procession continues after the brief stopover. Destination is the Lagos State House of Assembly, where they are to present their demands.
is trying. This January,
But Deputy Governor of Lagos State, Femi Hamzat, will receive them, takes time out to address the crowd.
We will meet very, very soon. We will read the letter, and then we will hear from your leadership. I want to thank you because this is a peaceful protest. And like we said in a democracy, it is fundamental. So I want to thank you, and may God bless you all.
With the protest done, some of the unionists expressed their reservations.
The Buhari regime in 8 years spent 11 trillion naira on importation of fuel. If you fix our refinery, we have no business importing fuel. In fact, we should be exporting petroleum products and be as rich as other oil-producing countries. So you cannot continue to punish the Nigerian people for the irresponsibility of the Nigerian ruling class. That's what is going on.
In our sector, there's no regulation. There's nothing called minimum wage, as I'm talking about. There is no palliative. There is no standardization. As I'm talking to you, we still have some of our members collecting as low as 10,000 naira.
Well, the protest has been done, and of course the demands have been made. Now the unionists would wait to see if the government would accede to their request, because they say that is the only time they will drop this struggle. From Alausa in Lagos, Chris Alems, Channels Television News.
Indeed, you're still watching Sunrise Daily, coming to you from both our studios in Lagos and Abuja. We still have our guest with us, Mr. Ebun-Olu Adegboruwa, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Is still with us on the program this morning. Well, sir, let me quickly take you up. Let's quickly put this matter of the protest to end with this particular question, and we move on to the ministerial nominees, and you give us an overview of that. But how long do you think that Labour should give government? And are you satisfied that at the last NEC meeting, as a National Economic Council meeting which was held, that they're looking at implementing quite a number of the palliatives that government has for the people through the state government? What level of confidence do you have in that?
Thank you very much, Marco. I honestly believe that the issue of palliative is just a way of dousing tension. When government keeps announcing these so-called palliatives, you discover that at the end of the day is just something that will get into the pocket of loyalists and supporters of government. What we advocate for is that you subsidize things that are common to everybody. I mean, education, invest in it properly and fund it, so that those who cannot afford the luxury of the private universities or traveling abroad can at least go to the public institutions. Maybe the reason why I'm here today is that Chief Obafemi Awolowo, subsidized education for us, and I was able to go to secondary school, I was able to attend university, because I may not have been able to afford to study law if there was no subsidy. Then we talked about electricity. You know, the money we spend in generating energy, power in Nigeria is enough to transform our economy. That enough can raise the status of our economic crisis if we have maybe 18 hours of electricity supply in Nigeria. So government should invest in that. How food is transported to the cities, invest in security, so that people can go back to their farms, businesses can resume, and this will affect the cost of price of food, and then also of inflation. So for me, generally, honestly, I do not believe in doling out money for people. But I agree with government to provide buses mass transit that can transport people from one location to the other. But it's not in physical cash to be given to people. Invest in infrastructure that will be common to all of us. And then secondly is that you cut your luxuries. The Orosanye report is in Aso Rock. It's with President Bola Tinubu as is there now. And the report is that we need to merge ministries. We need to use into the system of screening of the ministers. For instance, if you want to appoint a senior advocate in Nigeria, the Legal Practitioners Privileges Committee will publish the names of all the shortlisted candidates in the newspapers, asking the public to make representation. If you have any reason why you don't want this person to be appointed as a senior advocate, even in my church, for us to appoint pastors, their names will be sent to all parishes to be posted on the notice boards for people to say, because probably the National Assembly may not know these people enough. Their constituencies, we know them well. So they should be given opportunity to make representations to the National Assembly concerning the candidates. And that's why it should not be a matter that is secret. Their names should have been forwarded earlier or at least days before the presentation to the National Assembly, so that Nigerians will have the opportunity of at least supplying vital information. It is not good that it's after a person has been appointed, we then discover that he has corruption cases pending.
You know, it's expected that, of course, those names will have been sent to intelligence agencies. There will have been a lot of clearance, but clearly you say that is not enough. We need to step up that game. As we wind down quickly, I must get your thoughts on the case of the suspended CBN governor, because you had written about this in the past. In fact, some had seen this coming all the way from last year. And I remember there was a time you even challenged the DSS to charge Mr. Emefiele's court earlier in the year before all of this happened. But now the court has given him leave to serve the DSS, you know, the bail ruling, but he's still being held by the CBN. There was that drama that played out between the CBN, or rather the DSS, and the correctional service. It didn't look too good at all. Your final thoughts on that one?
You know, the reason why we established judiciary is to avoid the rule of the mob. A case whereby you think you are right, I think I'm right, and we begin to banter ourselves, and then there will be lawlessness. So we then through common agreement and consent, say, let's have an institution that can adjudicate in respect of dispute. The DSS, as an establishment, has the responsibility to investigate, to make charges against people. But you can't determine their fate. You have to go to court. And once you have surrendered that matter to the Federal High Court by preferring a charge against the former CBN governor, you then have to fold your arms and await the determination of your charge, because the person is just a suspect. And our law says that a person is presumed innocent until the contrary is proved. Assuming, for instance, after this whole trial, the judge strikes out the charge and declares Emefiele free, you will have made him go through this illegal detention for no reason. That's why we advocate for the issue of bail. Allow the man to enjoy his right. It's not a capital offense that is punishable with death. It's not a rape offense. It's not levying war against Nigeria. So my appeal is to the Director General of DSS, and indeed to the presidency, because the DSS is under the presidency. Let us not give the impression that this administration is flouting court orders. The order is clear.
Isn't it doing that already?
That's what I'm saying, that the organization that is putting this in perspective is the DSS. So the presidency should call the DSS to order, to obey the order of the Federal High Court by releasing Mr. Emefiele to enjoy the benefit of the bail granted by the Federal High Court. On top of that, let the Federal High Court, maybe through the Chief Judge, at least do a circular to all the divisions of the Federal High Court in Nigeria not to entertain any further charge from the DSS until there is compliance with the order of the Federal High Court. Because in this society we collapse. If we come to a stage whereby people are arrested and then they are kept in custody at the mercy of the presidency of the DSS. You remember the chairman of EFCC? As we speak, we don't know his fate. Whether he's still, I think he's still in custody because he's not been released. So you can't run a society whereby the freedom of individuals gets circumscribed. And I think that President Bola Tinubu has a duty to convince Nigerians that he does not sanction this flagrant violation of the order of a court by asking DSS to release Emefiele immediately.
And still hovering around justice, do you see this administration, when it constitutes its cabinet, aligning with that age-long clamor for the separation of the office of the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice? And do you see a Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Lateef Fagbemi, being that Attorney General of the Federation?
Well, when the name filtered out that Prince Lateef Fagbemi was nominated as the Attorney General, I can tell you within the bar, we were all rejoicing because he's a professional to the core. I mean, one of the best of the best. So I think the opportunity has come for us to separate that office of the Attorney General with the Minister of Justice. There is a bill pending before the presidency, passed by the National Assembly, separating these offices. All that the president needs to do is to assent to that bill and separate that office so that the Minister of Justice will be a politician. And then the Attorney General is a professional who is dealing with purely legal matters, attending to serious legal issues on behalf of the government. I think this is an opportunity to do that.
All eyes on the government, definitely, but would like to thank you so much, Mr. Ebun-Olu Adegboruwa, for your time. It's good to see you again.
Thank you very much.
So wish you the very best.
Yes, I was just on temporary break, but thank God we're back.
We dragged you out.
Thank you.
Thank you once again for your time on the show. Well, we'll take a moment now, and when we return, we're back with yet another major topic. So please stay with us.
Senate.
Mr. Nominee, sir.
President Bola Tinubu's spokesman, Mr. Dele Alake, opens Wednesday's screening exercise. He's asked pointed questions on protecting the freedom of the press and regulating the social media.
The social media has two sides. There is a positive side, there is a negative side. The downside is so detrimental to good and decent society. So I will recommend a strengthening of our regulations and application of those regulations.
The minority leader also quizzes him about a remark he made during the presidential campaigns to the displeasure of the majority leader.
I read a statement where you labeled supporters of a particular presidential candidate as wild dogs. Buying blood on social media. Have you come across that statement? Are you aware of it?
The minority leader was raising questions that bordered on campaign. This had happened several months ago. And if we're here as senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria screening ministerial nominees, we're not supposed to bring in issues that had come and gone.
Next up is Mr. Lateef Fagbemi, who speaks passionately and exhaustively on the judiciary, the rule of law, as well as noted eyebrow-raising practices by some anti-corruption agencies.
If I have my way, I will advise the president to unbundle. First of all, bring ICPC and EFCC together, unbundle them. Investigation should not be handled by the same body. There must be a supervisory authority within the same system. If there is investigation, it is another body. Prosecution is another body. It doesn't augur well to ask the same authority to, do investigation, come and do prosecution. That is where we have problems.
Medical expert Dr. Ali Pate is also before the Senate, and the questions center on vaccine independence, wealth of medical workers, and resources for the health sector. Another nominee, Dr. Doris Uzoka, answered questions on the business and investment environment.
We need to look at the conditions of service
the circumstances, the compensation, and in a way re-energize the sector around the mission, because no one joins the health sector who is not committed to serving his or her patients.
If we improve the land reform of each state, because the businesses are within the state, the economy of this country is within the state, and that's the responsibility of the state governors. There should be a deliberate attempt to improve land reform, and most especially automate the process of owning land, owning property, landed properties, and using it for businesses.
For the second time, the President's Chief of Staff arrives at the Senate chamber with a second batch of nominees. The list contains 19 names. Prominent on the list are 5 former governors: Adegboyega Oyetola, Atiku Bagudu, Bello Matawale, Ibrahim Gaidam, and Simon Lalong. Some former lawmakers also made the cut, namely Senators Aliyu Abdullahi, Heineken Lukubiri, as well as Representatives Zephaniah Jisalo and Dr. Yusuf Tanko Sununu. The new nominees are expected to proceed for documentation immediately, while the screening will resume on Friday, August 4th, 2023. Linda Kibe, Channels Television News.
All right, welcome back. Well, yes, we have Mr. Jacob Heller, who joins us this morning to give us his perspective on the ongoing screening for the ministerial nominees. But we will also have Dr. Billy Gillis-Harry give his perspective on the Port Harcourt refinery and the demands of labor. Gentlemen, good morning. Doctor, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, yes, they're taking a break today from that screening, and they will continue tomorrow. The second batch, which the president has sent to them. So that list of the ministers, the fresh list is there. And I mean, if you look at that list, you can see clearly the governors are back.
Yes.
But we also do remember that 2 months ago, the president, before his inauguration, did say, look, time for politics to take backstage. Competence and those who share in the vision will take center stage. Do you see that here?
Well, I see a rapid payback to the governors and those who worked for him. I don't totally doubt their competence, but it's all a recycling of various people that have been, they are never tired of being in governance, you know. But Chamberlain, I know you didn't ask me this, but, you know, yesterday was a Black Wednesday for me.
Why is that?
When that list, the 19 list, was transmitted to the National Assembly, and we did a cursory look at them and discovered that there is no person with disability there. Although there is one person that we are told is an amputee, but is not a member of the community, doesn't have anything and doesn't know anything about the community of persons with disability.
But do they have to be members of the community?
No, they don't have to. But then it's also important to bring up people that knows the pulse of the community, knows what disability is, you know, and can feel the pain of these, of my people that have been so marginalized and not recognized by government at that level. It's disheartening. And I'm beginning to feel and ask, is this president sensitive at all? Is he sensitive to 20 to 27, 35 million people? How can you ignore this segment of people? And yet, you told me that the poor will breathe. No, he's breathing on our neck right now.
How do you plan to?
Well, we are going to meet, interrogate the situation. If truly and really this gentleman, one Senator Ibrahim, I'm told, an amputee, we are interrogating that. If we truly find out that that's the case, then our strategy will be how do we engage him to make sure he's a true representative of the community in the cabinet. But it's amazing. It's amazing that 46 people, if, for instance, the amputee is really appointed, but it's disheartening. So all of that number, no persons with disabilities is inclusive. Congratulations to women.
Do they have to be ministers? Because, I mean, one would think that part of what you're trying to raise is, number one, the awareness to ensure that people actually recognize and address the issues of the community. So if you have persons who can address that,
No. You see, Chamberlain, this concept of we speak for everybody does not apply. That's the same mistake that they are making with the palliatives and all the discussion. No persons with disability. You don't know what I go through. You cannot truly and adequately represent me and put forward my case. There's a saying that who feels it knows where it pains, you know, or whichever way it's said. But the point is, you cannot say that, well, we are there, we'll speak for everybody, when you don't know the issues around persons with disabilities.
So I was asking, I hear you though, but so I'm asking, do they have to have a ministerial position? What if it's not done yet? What if he has to ensure that they are, number one, included in the governance and their issues addressed?
We're tired of SA that will never sit in the cabinet meeting. That's a very important and pivotal segment of governance, where the president is properly advised, where an opinion of the community can be heard, where concrete decisions are made, where policy decisions are made. And if you take us out of that room, how on earth do we trust you that you will truly represent us? If there's one thing that this president had done that had given me sleepless night and the entire community of persons with disability, it is this injustice. And I think that knowing him too well, that he has suffered some element of injustice, he shouldn't be perpetrating injustice to the community of persons with disability.
At this point,
this is very angry.
Is there any room for giving him the benefit of the doubt here, from what you've seen so far?
There is no, well, the only benefit of doubt, I was so grossly disappointed because I have friends around him, and I thought, and these friends are people who have been working with me, working with the community. I know that the chief of staff will always insist in his event that there must be, they will call me and say, get us a sign language interpreter. And I will do that, and I thought that he would carry that passion.
So doesn't that suggest that maybe there might be something in the offering that you may not know about?
Anything less than a ministerial position is an absolute rape on the community.
Even though you say that you will interrogate the senator.
Well, we will.
If that's the case.
If he is, that's one way to cushion the anger. And we will try and work with that gentleman, all right? However, if it's not, as we speak, our research team is researching him. If it's not, this is an unforgivable sin.
Well, indeed, inclusion is always very important. You were saying congratulations to the women, but then people will say, oh, we've had women in the cabinets before. What impact precisely did they make on the lives of ordinary women, if not just for the sake of their own representation?
Well, the truth is that this cabinet presents more women. That's my opinion, generally. There's nothing like you being in the room. Yes, there are people that will be there and they'll put their personal issues forward.
No, I think I came out wrong. What I meant is, I think it's just the force of representation. The fact that, young girls can look in the cabinet and say, oh, there are people like me there. You would think that is all. That will be almost all of the benefits that, accrues to women. I'm not saying that they should remove them as a result of that. Of course,
that's a good benefit.
More.
That's a good benefit. You know what that would do? Do you know what you do to young women out there every time they see you on screen? You have become a role model. They can look at you and say, there is hope for women, And that's the same thing we want to ensure happens in this cabinet.
So that's why I'm saying that, you have also acknowledged that it does appear, even though it's not confirmed yet, that there could be somebody with a disability being appointed as a ministerial nominee. The list hasn't been confirmed yet. You're going to confirm that. But wouldn't that, if that is all you're looking at, if that is all about it, representation, you have that? Yeah,
well, 1 out of 1 over 46. that's an abysmal. Truly and really, do you know, if you look at it concretely, the not appointing us, the president had broken the law. Because the law says at least 5%. At least 5%. Okay, so we're not asking for 5%. Give us 2%. Give us 1%. Give us a concrete, visible 1% that we can...
What sort of disabilities are you looking at, though? Because some people will say, well, I can't see properly. That's a disability. Some of them are wearing glasses. What sort of disability do you really want to see represented there?
It doesn't really matter whether it's Down syndrome or the blind or someone who has physical disability, whether it's albinism. I really don't care what type, as long as the type is represented in that room. That's what matters to us. And then we will work with this person, and preferably somebody that have identified with the community. Somebody that we can reach and say, please put this forward.
You said, don't forget that this person, whoever this person is, or the groups of people you're looking at, they're not going to be sent to the Ministry of Disability. They're going to be making, how will I put it now, policies that affect everyone, regardless. Young people, children, women, men, old people, all categories of people are the people that, their policies will affect.
That's exactly what we're saying, because we have the capacity to function in every given area. In fact, it will be exclusion taking somebody with disability and say, oh, go to Ministry of Disability or Ministry of Humanitarian. No, that's not what we're asking for. We have the capacity to function in every given opportunity. Trust me. And they are very qualified, young, vibrant people that can do the job. We want to be part of governance, not just for being part of it, but we want to contribute to nation building.
Are you also making this demand at the level of state government?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I've written to all the government houses even before the governors arrived there. I've written to all of them, and I have proof. And some of them have actually written back to commit to ensuring that they will appoint persons with disability as commissioners in their cabinet. So we're not just pushing the president, we're pushing the governors. We're not just pushing the governors, we're pushing also the ministers that will come in when they will start appointing heads of parastatals. We're interested in every area of governance, including the local government. I am much more determined to push more persons with disability to become local government chairmen and councillors. I'm very, very determined, and it's a task that must be done.
All right, we'll keep tabs on that one, but other than that, do you have any other concerns in terms of expectations from the president, at least from the performance and the list of the ministers released, them hitting the ground running, as we always say? Well,
the only concern I have, Chamberlain, is that I thought that this president was going to have a small government. The last time I checked, Buhari's ministerial list, I think, was 44. This is 47. For heaven's sake, where are we going? Where are we going with that number of people? Look at the cost. All of these people are going to appoint 8. Some of them will appoint 10. You can imagine how much it will cost. And guess what? When a minister is at the airport, the whole ministry is closed. Everybody goes to the airport. Check the volume of fuel that they are going to spend going to the airport and all that.
They also suggested that what if they merge ministries or create new ministries, for instance?
Creating more ministries is an addition, it's not a subtraction. Merging more ministries with 47 ministers, I don't know what kind of ministry you're going to get.
So I guess we'll wait and see what the big plan is.
Well, we wait and see. But this game of wait and see does not help in perception. And once the people perception start tilting negatively, it is not good for any government. So, Mr. President, I don't mind you this morning sending one extra person to complete that list. Oh, yes, you will say, well, I'm still talking about small government, but please represent us. Let's have one of us in your cabinet that will be proud to say, yes, you have done something that touched the hearts of the community of persons with disability. You can do it.
All right, we also do have Dr. Billy Gillis-Harry. He joins us virtually. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well, yesterday, Labour did hit the streets in protest, and thereafter, they had a meeting with the president. And look at this list of demands, because Labour did subsequently issue a notice which suggests that the protests, as they called it, has been put on hold. So, they say the president in that meeting committed to an immediate restructuring of the framework for engagement in line with the input of Labour leaders. He let out a certainty that the Port Harcourt refinery will commence production by December this year. He pledged to ensure that agreement is reached on the wage award for Nigerian workers immediately. He promised to unveil a workable roadmap to the CNG alternative next week. Dr. Harry, the second part here, which is about the Port Harcourt refinery. We know that previously there had been talk about Port Harcourt refinery coming on stream, and many wonder, they thought that Labour had all this information, there, and so putting it here that he has stated this may not necessarily cut it, but being in the industry, what can you tell us about the coming on stream of Port Harcourt refinery this year?
Good morning, Nigerians. Good morning, Mr. Chamberlain, for having me. First of all, I am very much in support of Labour's request and the desire to have the refinery working. I'm also very impressed that the president of Labour, NLC, is very well informed from what I've seen in the presentation. In reality, the refinery is almost ready to work. Technimont is doing a very good job. They have bits and pieces of challenges here and there, and I do hope that our government and NNPC will focus on ensuring that every single payment that is required is made for them. So yes, the December date request is a fair one. I think it's a fair deal between government and Labour. And for us in Petro, we think that we should even urge the president to do much more, because the idea of importing PMS into this country should be something that we must, quickly, get over with. So the refinery, I think that December projection is not a bad one, requesting that. But we need to work hard enough to make sure that even the refinery is delivered to work before December. So that's where we are. I'm very much in support.
All right, Dr. Harry, just give us a moment. We understand we need to go to commercial break, but we'll be back and get more response from you about some of these demands and its implication. Stay on with us. Welcome back. Well, Dr. Harry, when you say the December date is a fair deal, your members are all over the sector, so they should have, if not first-hand information as to what it really will be, because now that this is out there, Nigerians would expect that what the information that they put out is the right information. And as a matter of fact, the NNPC gives the impression, I think sometime earlier this year, that the PH refinery, yes, will come on stream before the end of this year, and then Dangote refinery as well, probably sometime next year. And then if that were the case, you will have surplus of the products in the market, and it will have an impact on probably the pricing. You never know. So let's get your impression, because there's lots of concern about pricing in the country. First, what do you know? Do you have information as well about the coming on stream of the Dangote refinery and what that will mean in addition to PH refinery and the impact of the product, if it will have any impact whatsoever?
Well, first of all, I think we need to really call a spade a spade. The Dangote refinery is operating in a free zone area. That already suggests that it is working outside of Nigeria. And it means that it is able to produce petroleum derivatives and export, as well as also import into Nigeria. So we have to be very clear about that. And I'm concerned about the euphoria that the first shipment of the PMS will come out by the end of July. We are in August, and we are still expecting that to happen. So I think we need to, this is why in Petron we are very insistent on empirical evidence before policy statements or activity statements or expectations are put, so that Nigerians are very well informed. As far as the refinery in Port Harcourt is concerned, when the government came up, and of course NNPC also came up to say, by July, the refinery will be up and running. If you recall, Petron and maybe a few other sister associations had said it did not look like that was possible. And today we're in August. That was not also delivered. So I want us to be careful about, expectations and promises that are coming in, because Nigerians must also begin to learn to hold our policymakers and our governments, accountable to some of these statements, so that we don't just run away with assumptions to plan our lives and then it never ever comes to happen. Nigeria is what we have. PMS has clearly shown us that it impacts our GDP, impacts our productive capacity, impacts almost every facet of our life. In fact,
we need to run, but pardon me for jumping in. So just give us one more thing before you go. What can ever happen, or what do you think needs to happen for the price of petrol to go down?
The only way the price of petrol will go down is that all our refineries in country are working and producing for domestic consumption. That's the only clear way. The other way is that CNG and LNG is introduced as fuel to fire our automobiles of any kind, whether it's tankers, it's cars, or buses, and so on. And that Petron is contributing immensely to make sure that that comes to fruition.
Okay, Mr. Pele, at the moment, several policies of government, yes, you've seen protests in some parts of the country, and lots of other people just looking and wondering the kind of impact all of this will have in the days ahead. I know the government also grappling internationally with the development in the Niger Republic, our neighbors here. What do you think of how government is handling all of these policies?
Well, for a country that is struggling with her economy and also trying to ensure that we have a proper political direction, of course, the protests will take a toll on these on government generally, on the operations in particular, and the policies that drives these agitations and how quickly the government is willing to negotiate and take a path that will lead to a peaceful resolution of some of this agitation is very, very important. And the earlier we sit down, instead of trying to buy time and all that, sit down with the people concerned and discuss the issues and come to terms with what is workable for everybody. I don't think that NLC wants to run down the country. No. I don't also think that the government wants to crumple up them. It's just the time for both parties to sit down and discuss what is agreeable and workable for the interest of all. I think the government is also working for the masses as well as NLC working for the masses. I think the earlier they sit down and give time to issues, discuss them thoroughly and find a solution, the better. Nobody, the poor is suffering all of this.
All right, we do thank you for coming on. Mr. Jacob Heller, founder, CEO, TAF Africa, and Dr. Billy Gillis-Harry, thank you for your time as always.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so there you go. That wraps it up today on the program. We do thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Indeed, stay warm out there. Thank you for watching. I'm Malcolm Yusuf.
So much to look forward to. Keep our eyes on the process across the Federation for you. Thank you for watching. I am Bukola Koka.
I am Kado Kikilu. Goodbye.